Hello, everyone. Welcome to Booked Out with Bree. I have one of my favorite humans here with me today, Naomi. She is, your jaw will drop as you listen to her talk and what she's been able to do. And I think you also will see herself in your story because I'm guessing if you're here listening, you also are an empowered woman, you're an empowered mom, you have big dreams and goals, and like all of us, we're trying to connect the dots and figure out how it all works together. Naomi is just such a master at, moving forward, taking action, building her dreams, but also staying so grounded and rooted in what matters, what's important. So, hi Naomi, I'm so happy that you're here.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. I feel like your intros are always like the best thing ever. It's like, oh, thank you. I just feel like an incredible like ray of sunshine now.
Oh, I'm so glad. I know it's so funny because like when you book into the podcast, you always type your bio and then I'm like, no, my podcasts are just like total rift conversations. Like we're just following what feels alive, following the golden threads of the convo. So I love that. I'm just like, let's see what comes out when I introduce someone.
Which honestly is the best. It's like I made a decaf coffee just to like sip on. I'm like, it's literally just like a coffee chat. It's
100%.
yeah.
I love it.
Um,
Amazing. Well, with that, let's just dive right in. So, you started, well, I was going to say you started your business in the fall of 2023, but you started this pathway before that. So, let's start even before you decided to become a VA. What were you doing and what led to the next step in business?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Such a loaded question, but I think really what drove me to this specifically, my whole background is in hospitality, restaurants, management. I even went to school for nutrition, so I kind of went like more of the science route of things and did life coaching and wellness coaching for a while. And so I think so much of my journey has led me exactly to here, right? Where it's like I'm combining all of my skills that I have used over the course of my career and I've brought them to exactly what I'm doing now in my business. And I think, even in my journey to motherhood 6 years ago, there was this part of me that goes like, oh, maybe I should do something of my own. And I think we share that so much in our story of both of our husbands being like, why aren't you doing something of your own? You and I share that, the network marketing background and kind of, I feel like I had to really like dip my toes in a little bit and get my feet wet of like, can I do my own thing though? And not really have it's so funny to say the risk associated with it, right? Because it was like, oh, there's no overhead. Oh, there's no this. But like, I feel like in the startup of my network marketing business, there might have been more overhead than there was starting my VA and OBM business, right? Like you had to invest in products or the services or whatever you were offering in a network marketing business. And I feel like as a VA, like it's really relatively low overhead if you want it to be. If you invest in the right systems or use very minimal, like you don't have to have a website, you don't have to have any of that. And so I kind of laugh a little at myself looking back. I'm like, well, that was so silly because there's like no risk with what I did with this. But at the same time, it's really just been such a cool thing to be able to go through that evolution. And I don't think any of it is anything I would regret.
100%. I love that. Yeah. And what is, just to give some context to what we're going
Yeah.
to be diving into, what is your come up story? Like your A to Z transformation. It's so fun.
Yeah.
Let's drop the mic.
Um, in this space, right? Like VA world.
Yeah. Or just all of
Yeah.
it. I mean, I think your story is cool too, because, and this was my story, is like the VA is this pathway. And when you kind of master the VA skills, it opens up so much more.
Mm.
It's like the foundation to all the things.
Yeah. Yeah. So for me, I think really like if we're going come up story, it was realizing like my power and realizing that I just need to step into that. And so much of what you teach inside of your program and what I've learned to be true is the same, which is really it's just owning the skills and the things that you've been through and where you've been as what makes you uniquely qualified to serve someone, right? And so for me, it's like I look back and I'm like, man, I have the client relations skills because of restaurant experience, right? I did bartending, I did serving, I did management, I've managed people. So like I'm uniquely qualified to help business owners hire and create teams under them. Like not just me, but like if they want to build out a full-fledged company, I can help them do that. I know how to do that, right? There's parts of me that like I have the creative bone. I was in the culinary world. I worked in kitchens. Like I worked in borderline five-star restaurants and got to plate foods in those restaurants. That's an art. That's a gift. Like that doesn't just happen for anyone. And so I think so much of me was like, that's normal. Like that, I just normalized every part of who I was up till this point, just being like, oh, it's just what I do and it's just who I am. And looking from the outside in, I think so many of us are so good at doing that for others, where it's like you can see what other people are doing and you're like, dang, I could never do that. That's amazing. What a gift. And we're so easily like, oh, I'm just me, and we write that off. And so my journey really has just been kind of stepping into those gifts and those things that I've done and being like, this is what makes me uniquely qualified to be somebody's, not just VA or OBM. I actually wrote a post about this yesterday, but it's like, I'm a unicorn at what I do. Like, I am uniquely gifted exactly because of who I am. Right. And so I think just in this last year and a half, it's been stepping into that and learning to own that and speak to that. I think those all kind of fall in line with each other. And it's like, once you have that, it's like, you got it in the bag.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And some context too, you guys. So Naomi booked out she started as a VA Black Friday 2023. I'll never forget the date. I actually still remember like what I was doing when we
Yeah.
first connected. But I think didn't you book like 9 clients in 7 weeks? It was something absurd. We were just like full send, let's go.
Yeah, it was 9. And it's so crazy to look back to because it was even like the first 3 weeks, it was like crickets. And I'm all, am I doing something wrong? And you're like, it's been 3 weeks. Like, you're fine. Just keep doing it. And I'm like, but Brie, nobody's like wanting to book a call with me. Like, I'm failing. And you're like, it's fine. Just keep plugging away. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do what leaders say and trust the process. Like, it's fine. And then all of a sudden it was like full-fledged floodgates open. And I was like, oh my God, can I handle this?
Oh, so fun. Now, one of the things that I think is so notable to call out, and this was, in the earlier phase of you booking your first handful of clients, that I really noticed about you, all you guys that are listening now, like pay attention, take notes. What was so special about what you did, Naomi, was you were like very savage about applying for all roles and knowing that you could learn the things that you didn't know. And I see this so much, and I know you do now in your work too, where it's like there's two trains of thought. One is like someone sees an opportunity and they're like, I haven't done this or I haven't used this tech platform, and so like I'm not going to get it, so I'm not going to apply. And they write their own story versus you. And then like all the other VAs who've gone and successfully booked out their business, they're like, oh, I don't know that, but I can learn it. So I'm going to apply. And then on the discovery call, I'm going to tell them that I learn really quickly and I can figure things out. And no, I don't know it, but I can figure it out in 2 seconds. And I've already started doing research on it. And they're like, you're hired. And I
Yeah.
remember that about you. And I know you help people do that now too. And I just think that's like the make or break. Like boils down to, and I mean, it's mindset. It's like, I know this and I can't do it, or I don't know that, or I don't know this and I can't do it, or I don't know it, but I can figure it out.
Yep, 100%. I'll never forget a couple months ago. It was like right before Christmas time. One of my one-to-one clients asked me, she's like, I process all of my payments through Stripe. And she's sharing this whole thing with me about like, I want to be able to visually see my MRR, not just this month, but Stripe doesn't allow for, the months that are already in the works, what you have subscriptions booked for. She's like, but I need like a dashboard. I need a place to see like, what do I have through the whole year already? Like, how do I see that? And I'm like, well, we'll have to build something like that has to exist. There has to be a system or somewhere we can integrate with or whatever. And I can do the research. She's like, can we just put it in like Google Sheets or something? And I'm like, I don't know, probably. And she's like, would you do that? And I'm like, I have no idea how to do this, you know? And so I remember in that conversation just being like, yeah, you know what? I'll figure it out. Here's what it'll take. And, we talked about like, it's going to prolong some of the other tasks we're working on, but if that's a priority to you, like, let's make it happen. So we did. And I remember getting off the phone and sharing with my husband, like, that's what he does professionally for work. And he's like, Naomi, this is going to take a long time. Like, you don't know what you committed to, like, all of these things, right? And I'm like, but where there's a will, there's a way. And he's like, what? And I did. I figured it out. We got it handled. Like, now we have a whole system of how we do that in her business. And it's like, I think so much of what our human nature is to be like, oh, I just don't know how, right? And so I think one thing that I've learned, especially in this last year and a half in this journey, is like, you only are going to not know how if you tell yourself that. And if you have the open mindedness, and I've said this since like day one of my business, but like I believe in that mindset of everything is figure outable. And so, if you're willing to be a student, then you can learn. And if you're willing to learn, then you can eventually become the teacher?
Absolutely. And the interesting perspective here too, because I have a team and now you have a team.
Yep.
When you're hiring, I don't want the person who's like, I know all the things and, that's that. Like, I want someone, even if they don't know and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna go figure that out. Like, that is what I hire for. I don't want, the one and done person. I want the mindset, like the savagery, the like, yeah, let's figure this out together. Let's grow together. It's so
Yep.
appealing to business owners too who are hiring VAs.
It is. It is. And I think for me, like looking back and conversations and different like successes, and even like some of the not so great situations that I've been in my business, it's been like, I think so much of that and what's done well for me is like leaning into more of that, not necessarily emotion, but like the connection to everything, right? And so, like, even on discovery calls, like, if I don't feel connected to somebody's business or mission, it's like, it's probably a no for me. And that's okay. It's okay, even as a VA, to say that. And then on the flip side, for them, like, I want them to feel connected to the work I'm doing with them and feel as much I'm a part of that as they are. And know that, like, when you bring me onto your team, like, I genuinely want to be somebody who's fully behind your mission and your values and the way that you're creating the ripple effect and the way that you're creating impact in the world, like that matters to me. So I think that's really huge.
Yeah, absolutely. It was
Yeah.
like what Leah said yesterday, like if you wouldn't date him, why would you work with him?
Yes.
Like rolling at that. So funny. Yeah.
So
Okay,
true.
let's talk about I think this is juicy because like obviously, in conversations we talk about like the best parts and where are you at now and the wins and the successes. Let's talk about the things that no one's talking about. Like let's talk
Yeah.
about crappy situations, challenges, like oh shits. Tell us about some of those, like your biggest learnings and like, man, if I'm gonna tell you this so that all of you guys listening can like avoid this.
Yeah. I think for me, I mean, I've had a really big one more recently. And it's so interesting because it really challenged me to refine things. And you and I share this mindset of like in those situations, I think the human nature, the natural part of me, like there is some nervous system, like things happening. Like I feel like warmth because I'm like, oh, like I never want to make someone feel any which way. Like that's never my goal at the end of the day, right? Like I want my clients to deeply love the work I'm doing for them, and that matters to me. And so, like, I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some of that that happens when there's situations that arise, right? But at the same time, in my head, I'm always like, you know what? Problems are able to be figured out, right? Like everything, again, it goes back, everything's figure outable. And I don't work in the ICU. Like I'm not dealing with dying patients. Like these are businesses, yes, and they're very valuable and very important. And also, like nobody's dying. So like we can figure this out, right? And we can talk about it. And I think learning to navigate like the conflict and different things that come up in business has made me so much stronger because it's like you being able to dial in yourself and remain calm and also handle those tastefully even if somebody else isn't, like that matters. And it speaks volumes to like who you are and what work is going to come follow, right? And so like specifically in the more recent situation, I had brought on a brand new client and this person wanted me for two very different roles. She wanted me for more of a management role in one side of her business, and in the other side of her business she wanted essentially just a task doer, somebody who could say, hey, I need this task done, can you do this? And just check a box. And so I said, well, yes, of course I can do that. And as I dove into her business, I really was like, okay, what's the priority here? Because the project management role was eating up 99% of the time that she slotted for me. And I did let her know, like, if we're going to continue, there's going to need to be expansion of hours if you want to add more tasks. Otherwise, like, if project management is your priority, I'm all in, like, we're doing it. And so, even from that situation, I could feel her energy change a little bit, where it was like, I don't know if she felt a reservation because I do charge a lot more than most VAs or OBMs. And she had vocalized, I hadn't paid that before. And there were situations that got brought up more than once about the price even after signing the contract. And so I think it didn't come as a shock to me when things kind of unraveled the way they did. But like, even in that situation, it was like very, very much so I could feel her energy shift. So when it shifted and I addressed like, hey, you've been a little quiet, like what's going on? I received a message from her like, let's, part ways, and how do we do that respectfully? And when you're working with a contractor like us, it's like, okay, on one hand, we all want, like, we're all human. We all want things to end the way that we want respectfully. And on the other hand, we're also talking about people's jobs and their livelihood, right? And so how can we both work together to create a solution? And I was really trying to meet her in the middle with that. And there was some stuff that came out, and you could tell, I think, because I was trying to meet her in the middle, but also stand firm in my boundaries with what was contracted and my belief and like my ability to help her, despite the fact that she felt we weren't aligned as a fit, and like at least continue out the month we were in, or at least continue out, the contract we had. It was like she had resistance. She just wanted a refund and all these things. And when she realized that I was setting strict boundaries, it was like all the floodgates open with emotions and the things, and not kind things said after like kind things were said. And so for me, it was like, I remember reaching out to you specifically because, you're my mentor and a close friend. And I go, what do I do in this situation? And I'll never forget you saying like, Naomi, there's like the energy behind it. And it's like, what is worth it and what is not? And so I think for me, one thing I've learned really to be true is just, even in situations where you're not aligned with somebody, even if it feels like, man, I got the crap end of the stick here because like I know I've done right by this person. I know I've done all I can. I know my value. I know I can serve you. It's like, if everything's in resistance to that, like sometimes it's just better to bless and release. And sometimes it's better to just say, okay, you know, this really stinks right now, and what can I take from this? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? And really do right by, myself and this person in this situation. And sometimes even if it's not monetarily the best decision for you, energetically it does make the most sense to be like, we're gonna part ways peacefully and just move on, and so it was really a hard pill for me to swallow in the beginning of this journey, specifically when I was ramping up my business and things like this happened where, you're taking a hit harder. And so I think even in just like a story and talking about something like this, one thing for people who are listening, like I'd love to say is, if that's a situation you're going through, like no matter what part you're at in your journey, it's gonna be okay. Like I think there's this part of us that's like, does this mean I'm gonna fail? And even I've had so much success over the last year and a half, but I'm human too, right? Like I find myself questioning, like, am I worth her spending this much because those things were questioned? And am I worth someone else spending that much because those things were questioned? And it really I had to take a step back for like a week and be like, what is true of me? What are the things that I believe in? What are my values? How do I hold myself? What do I like? And to me, integrity in business is so big. And when I reflect back to that situation, it's like, I never swayed from my values. I never swayed from my integrity. I could have easily snapped back with not nice things as well. I could have, let go of the things that I hold near and dear and that are important to me in that situation, because that's a way you can choose to handle that. And I chose to do the right thing, and I chose the integrity, and I chose the I guess bigger, better person route, if you will. And that's not like a thing to take lightly. I think that it's really easy to go the other path. And so even if it's hard, like those are things you have to really lean into as a business owner and say, okay, I believe in myself enough to know that like when I choose to hold my values and hold my integrity, like good things will follow. And what happened? Like it was so
So wild.
crazy. It was like two or three people in like 48 hours reached out to me and were like, I've referred somebody to you. I'm sending you somebody. And one was even for the exact dollar amount of the retainer I lost. So it was like very, very much, I'm like, I don't know if it's God, universe, or some higher power, but like this is my sign, like you're gonna be fine, you know?
Yes, yes. Sometimes it really sucks to be the bigger person. It's like ego versus abundance. And that was the exact conversation we had was just like you know where you're going and you know what you're doing. And if that was a fact, like this doesn't even matter. Like and yeah, that was
Yeah.
wild. Like I think it was like within hours you had gotten a new inquiry for like a
Yeah.
significant retainer package. Like
Yep. And
energy
it
is
was
real.
random. It was like somebody that had referred me to somebody through Threads. Like it wasn't even
Yeah.
a previous client for that person. It was like, hey, somebody tagged you on Threads as a referral. And when I looked at the tag, I'm like, I've never even worked with this person. She just knows me from Instagram. So it was really neat. And the email had the dollar amount. And I'm like, okay, okay, I see you.
Yeah, that was what. Yeah, that's right. It was the exact same dollar amount as the retainer that
Yep.
closed. Yeah. Trippy.
Yeah, you can't
So
make that
cool.
up.
No, you really can't. You can't.
Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome. Well, what would you say are your top three tips? Let's touch on motherhood because I know that's, very important part of who you are, who I am, a lot of the listeners on this show. What are your top three tips for moms who are building businesses from home alongside of their kids?
Yeah. I think the first one is definitely grace, like a lot of grace for yourself. Like it's so enough to be mom. Like we're so easily like, I don't want to just be mom, but like just being a mom is a full-time job, right? Like, and so I think sometimes, especially in the thick of motherhood and our busyness of day-to-day life, we forget how valuable that in itself is. And the fact that you're like probably here listening to this, running a business and doing motherhood alongside of it and wearing all the hats, doing all the things, like that's not nothing. That's a massive feat. And so in the hard moments, like always remembering to give yourself grace and patience and like self-kindness, right? Like we don't give ourselves enough self-kindness, I think, in hard situations or we get down on ourselves. So grace is definitely like my top of list. Um, the second thing is really like, I think one thing that's benefited me is time blocking and trying to really stick to that, right? Like, we're moms, we got to be flexible, especially if you're in situations like Brie and myself where our husbands work full time. In the beginning, I can't speak for you. In the beginning, your husband was the primary source of income, right? Like now it's like, here, hubby. But I think really so much of that piece of things where it's like, I claim that as my role, right? You claim that as your role, where it's like, I choose to do business and business, like, I have big, wild, crazy, great goals. And also, I'm never going to put those before my children. And that's why I started this. And that's why you started this. And so I think in that, it's gotten like very important to me to be as intentional as possible with my time and time slotting things throughout my day, calendaring everything. And like, there's got to be wiggle room. There's going to be days where things get moved, but really doing my best to stick to that and like map out my week ahead of time so that I have a clear vision of like when I have free time available, if that exists, or is there places where I can have wiggle room for different things. So that I always know what my capacity is. I don't have to live on what's happening in 2 hours from now or on a whim. Like to me, that doesn't feel good. And even if you're a person who likes to kind of like fly by the seat of your pants, if you want to do all the things well, it starts with like that foundational piece, right? And really like managing your time effectively, I think is super helpful. And I would say the third one is just staying connected in community and leaning into other people who are doing it too. I think it's one thing to have a community of moms, and I have some amazing mom friends who are like local to me that don't have, a business of their own and don't do the things. And like they're dear friends of mine, and I spend lots of time with them. And also, I have my mom friends that are entrepreneurs, and it's a very different level of conversation. It's a very different level of understanding for like me as a person. And I think it's so important to have that type of community as somebody in your corner too, even if it's just online. Like, I mean, shoot, you and I hadn't even met until like what 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, those three things are probably my three top of the list for sure.
So good. So
Yeah.
good. Amazing. Well, for anyone who wants to connect with you, learn from you, work with you, what's the best way to get in touch and how can they get involved in your world?
Yeah. So Right now, I mean, my business is it's so ever changing, you know. I mean, I manage one-to-one clients through my OBM and VA services and I'm always on Instagram. So if you want to find me on Instagram, I'm sure Brie will tag me in the show notes, but it's at it's naomi.birm, BIRM. And really right now it's been growing community. That's been such a focus of mine. And really, I think it's supporting other moms in business. And that's what I mean. My business is the Busy Mama Collective. And so my goal has always been like, I want to not just support moms in their journey, in their business, and impacting others through what their business goals are by being a support system for them as an OBM or as a VA. But also on the flip side, like I have dreams of growing my team and growing my business so that I can support other moms who want to have flexibility in their schedule around their families. And so really it's like empowering moms by by a team of moms, right? And so it's so much of that that I speak to in my content. It's so much of that I speak to in my podcast. I actually also have a podcast as well called Grit to Glow. And yeah, I mean, it's always growing and I'm there and you can find me on both literally all the time. So
Mm, yay. Yes, we'll link all the things in the show notes. So I definitely encourage you to reach out to Naomi, let her know what you loved most, what landed for you, and just get involved in her world. And yeah, her community's the best, very abundant.
I
Yeah.
love you, Brie. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Love you. Thank you for being on. And I'm sure this isn't your first podcast experience on Booked Out with Brie, and it won't be your last. So you guys will definitely
Definitely
see
not.
Naomi. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening. I will see you on next week's episode.